Hello, everyone. I'm joined today with Alan Harris. How are you doing today, Alan?
Hey, Tachyon.
Hey, so before we begin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people who you are?
Um, like you said, my name's Alan Harris. We're going to be talking about GamerGate today. My involvement was relatively minor. Uh, really, probably the thing that I'm the focal point of my involvement in GamerGate was helping to organize the Texas meetups back in 2016. It may have been 2015. Um, But yeah, that's really my credit to fame.
All right. So what got you involved with this? Why do you care about GamerGate? Why did you care about GamerGate?
Well, there was a YouTuber that did like science videos. I can't. It wasn't Dark Matter. It was another guy, and I can't think of his name now. It's been so long, and he happened to mention it in one of his videos, and so he mentioned that it was Twitter heavy, and at that time I had a Twitter account, but I basically had never used it. I'd had it for like a year. That would have been, I want to say, November of 2014, and so I went to Twitter and just searched for the hashtag, and uh, got some really nasty messages from people critical of Gamergate, encouraging me not to talk to those misogynists and such. And then, but the guys that were in support of the hashtag, of the sort of movement, although at that point it wasn't really a movement yet, they were really nice to me, and so that's how I got involved in it.
Were they in fact misogynists?
Uh, mm, I'm scratching my head to think of anybody that would really qualify for that, but I think there may have been like two people that were involved heavily early on that might have been, but mostly no. In fact, a lot of them were actual women. A surprising number.
Well, why do you think that the people who warned you told you that they were misogynists?
It was just a label that they were using. It didn't really mean misogynist. I've found since all of this heated discussion, that especially online, people just use labels to basically mark things as ugly or bad or something, things they don't like. But usually, when they use that label, it doesn't actually mean that label. So that was just a prop for them to keep the discussion, keep the the leverage of the discussion on their side.
What did Gamergate mean to you?
Uh, Now that's a good question. For me, it was mostly about the people that I met, to tell you the truth. Prior to that, I was very antisocial, and so I didn't really have a lot of friends, to be honest. And that's really what GamerGate was about to me, was meeting all those people and having good, productive conversations about a lot of things, including politics.
You said you hosted the meetups. What made you want to get involved in that capacity?
Actually, there was this lady that I was renting a room from at the time, or around that time. Something Betty's. I can't remember her handle now, but her name was Betty. And she was the one that recommended it originally, and then I brought it up with Ashley Phoenix and I can't remember who else. There were two other guys involved, but Ashley was I think the best known at the time. And I brought it up in a DM with them. They were like, "That's a great idea. I don't think anybody's actually had like an official quote unquote meetup in Texas," which, as far as I was aware, was true. And so we held one let's see, in Dallas, San Antonio, which is where I was at the time, and Austin. And it seems like there was one other place, but I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, I actually hosted the St. Louis meetups. I hosted they weren't that big, but I hosted several. I don't know the exact number, but we did like one at an arcade, another we did at a mall, and then we might have done two at an there were definitely one or two more, but it was so long ago.
Yeah, yeah. God, almost a decade. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I tried to do one at a convention, and it was weird because like an anti-GamerGate person showed up, and then a pro GamerGate person showed up, but me and the pro person only talked for like literally 2 minutes in the hallway. We're like, "Oh, hey, you're here for the meetup. What's up?" And then it was literally just like the three of us. Yeah.
Well, none of mine were that small, but they weren't big. I want to say that the San Antonio meetup was probably the smallest, and we had 20 people or so there, which for me was a big deal at the time, anyway.
Yeah, I think our biggest one was like 8 or 9 people at the arcade. I mean, it was really
Uh,
fun. We also did a meetup too at a cigar lounge.
Very misogynistic there.
Well, actually, it wasn't even so much a meetup. It was a real life debate with an anti-Gamergate person in the real world, and then like just a bunch of like other people who were interested. Like one anti-Gamergate person that came to watch, and then so did like 4 or 5 uh, pro GG people, and then like one or no, I guess it was like probably like 2 or 3 pro GG people, and then like or two neutral people. Like it was more
Mhm.
like let's go talk about this and do a live debate for fun. And some people showed up and wanted to talk about it and watch it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've really had any association with anybody that I would say was actively anti-Gamergate. The closest that I've got are a couple of friends that knew about it and they kind of troll Gamergate sometimes. But it's mostly just friendly ribbing. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had a conversation in any capacity outside of Twitter with somebody that was anti, that was actively critical of Gamergate.
So, do you consider yourself a gamer?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've always loved games. Not in this. I would say not in the same way as a lot of gamer gators who I just don't know how they have that much free time to play as much as they do. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of video games.
What does the term gamer mean to you?
To me, so yeah, to me, it just means somebody that really enjoys and actively plays games, video games. Um, For people critical of Gamergate, I know that it's got other connotations, but that's what it means to me.
So, does the term gamer have any gendered connotations at all, or no?
No, not to me. I recognize that in a lot of the gaming spaces, the overwhelming majority of people are men or male. But I don't associate it. I mean, women like video games, too. So
On August 28th, 2014, 10 competing publications all published articles on the same day, calling for an end to the gamer identity. These 10 articles were followed by 9 additional articles on other mostly gaming sites over the next few days, also calling for an end to the gamer identity. How did these articles make you feel?
to tell you the truth, I didn't even read those until probably 2 months after I first came and talked about it on Twitter. So they didn't really have any effect on me. The thing is, I already knew that media in general is very incestuous, right? But I didn't know how bad it was. I guess I should say. They're late, and this is just a consequence of the market. To be honest, I'm not giving them too much shit over it, but they're lazy. Um, and so honestly, the articles just they didn't really affect me in any way. It was finding out that there was this sort of to get conspiratorial, this sort of cabal behind it that was sort of pulling the strings and directing conversation.
So you think that there was collusion with the games press?
Oh, oh yeah, and I have to be careful how I phrase this because I don't mean it in a conspiratorial way. I'm just kind of having a little fun with the expression, but um, it's a natural consequence of sort of colleague type uh, vocations to get together and sort of how would I say congeal into one kind of amorphous blob going the same direction. So I can't give them too much criticism for that, but it was shocking like how bad it was.
If the sorry, if these 19 sites didn't write these articles, but it just said, "Hey, look, we've got some ethical problems. We're working to fix these," or even just ignored people talking about ethics, do you think that GamerGate still would have happened?
Um, that's a tough say. I think that it would have happened eventually in some form because this was, I'm sure anybody can tell you, anybody that's involved in politics or gaming can tell you that this was a problem that was bubbling up from beneath for a long time. So eventually it would have happened. It just might not have been about games. It may have been about politics or food or something else. But it so the answer my answer to that question would be it might not have happened with Gamergate specifically, but it eventually would have happened because a lot of people were getting tired of really unethical media. They were getting tired of this sort of progressive encroachment and censorship and things like that.
Well, it seemed like the games press when they wrote these articles, they had some issues with gaming culture, uh, famously or infamously referring to people who stand in lines with mushroom hats as not even knowing why they're there. Um, Things like this. If they had genuine criticisms, or if sorry, do you think any of the criticisms of gaming culture that they laid out were genuine?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that it was misogynistic, although there probably was misogynistic stuff that was happening and probably still is. Um, but there is a lot of toxicity in particular online, multiplayer online gaming and gaming political discussion, and that still happens to this day. But the thing is, any topic that people are passionate about is going to be that way. That's it's not gaming isn't special in that manner. So yeah, they did. There were some legitimate criticisms. They injected their politics into the discussion in a way that was not appropriate for what they were trying, what would be a legitimate criticism.
When you say injected their politics, what do you mean?
Well, they clearly had an interest in pushing progressive policies into a lot of the media that they created. And progressive policies are fine. It's perfectly fine to advocate for it. But it led to a lot of behaviors that just that were unethical. Collusion being one thing, but also censorship campaigns, like outright censorship campaigns.
Were you more concerned with ethics in games journalism or with creative freedom?
Creative freedom, without a doubt.
It was
That
this.
was the thing that bugged me the most. Yeah.
It was the same for me. What about creative freedom made it so important to you?
Well, I, oh crap. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, my thing went to sleep. Why did it switch? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Sorry, my computer started to go to
No, you're fine.
sleep and then sorry, what were you asking?
What made creative freedom so important to you?
Oh, well, I mean, you can't have honest discussion without creative freedom. People should be able to, and I include progressives in this, by the way. They should be able to create the media that they want to create. But people won't have those discussions if you don't have a freedom to create something that's controversial.
I was talking with somebody yesterday for an interview, and they said that they thought that the creative freedom discussion should have taken place on a separate hashtag, not with Gamergate. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, Potentially, this gets into sort of more meta discussion about politics. Um, it probably would have been more appropriate, but it wouldn't have been as effective, and that's the problem. And like there was the same discussion had about hashtag not your shield, because it kind of amorphosized into Gamergate when in fact it was a completely separate movement. But they wouldn't have had a voice with the few number of people that they had. Same thing with Gamergate and Creative Freedom.
Did you care about ethics in games journalism at all, or was it just the creative freedom side, or for you?
Honestly, the ethics in games journalism never really bothered me that much because I was reasonably cognizant that number one, it's what would the term be? It's a luxury market, right? And number two, it's just not that important. People that read it, they're not going to have their minds changed by it. It just isn't going to happen. It's just really insulting that they can be so dishonest about it sometimes. So it never really the ugliness, like the collusion, which I think is what you were asking for. I just lost my train of thought. The collusion didn't really bother me. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. It's just
Okay.
games journalism isn't really that important to you.
Yeah, yeah. It's just I never really took I took it with a grain of salt. So it's what's more concerning to me is that it exposed that level of problems in ethics wasn't just in the gaming space. That it it infected all journalism, and Gamergate exposed that, and that does concern me because people make policy decisions based on mainstream news. You know,
Do you have any thoughts on SPJ AirPlay?
uh, I'd need something more specific. I mean, obviously I was aware of it. In fact, my roommate Betty actually went to SPJ Airplay.
Did you watch the video?
Oh yeah. Well, I watched probably an hour of it, and I want to say it was like 3 or 4 hours.
Do you think that SPJ AirPlay was a good thing for Gamergate to do to try and? Well, I guess it wasn't really. Sorry, let me rephrase the question. Do you think that SPJ? Do you think that the Society of Professional Journalists hosting this event to put Gamergate people with ethics experts was a good idea?
I do. I think it was good for us to have that discussion. It meant that the SPJ, which is an important body, sort of, it is and it isn't, but it was good because it gave us an opportunity to move a little bit more into the mainstream and have our objections seen by people that work in less luxury and more important areas.
Is there anything about games journalism you want to talk about before we move on to creative freedom?
Um, no, not particularly.
All right, all right. So here we go with the juicy questions, huh? Some political activists believed that using social media campaigns to demand artists change artistic elements of their work was a good thing. What do you think of this tactic?
Honestly, I object to it. I never liked. You were asking about the campaigns to get advertisers to pull their ads,
Oh,
right?
I skipped those because you said you didn't care about games journalism that much.
Oh, my bad, dude.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not. It's more of like a rough outline I sent
I
everybody
got you.
rather than like a direct like I'm gonna ask all of these questions.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to talk about Operation Disrespectful Nod, we can.
No, no, no. It's fine. We can move on.
It's no big deal. I got time, man. If it's up to you.
No, we can move on. I don't. It's just it's not really I mean, obviously it interests me, but with games journalism specifically, I'm just uh, not. I don't really have a lot of attachment to it.
Oh yeah, and we can edit out the meta part of it if you want. You don't have to go into like us talking about. It's up to you for
No,
the
no,
book interview.
it's fine. You can keep the whole thing. It doesn't bother me that anything that I say, it doesn't bother me that you publish it.
All right, so creative freedom. We've got these campaigns to try and change artistic works, like change the cover. What do you think?
Um, well, trying to think how to put this. It worries me because it's still happening, and honestly, it's happening even worse now than it was back in 2014. Um, uh, and it worries me because it stifles conversation. Creative freedom is a way that creativity is a way, and the creation of art is a way that people bring complicated topics that are difficult to broach into public discussion, and and pressuring people to change their creations. I mean, it's not a good way of facilitating conversation.
Do you think that there are better ways than campaigns for people to criticize artists?
Yeah, to one of the best ways is to create their own art, criticizing it. You know, if somebody has an objection to, say, the Spider-Man cover where it had I think it was Gwen like kind of crouched over and it was obviously accentuating her ass. You create your own cover, you create your own comic, and uh, use that medium as a way of expressing your frustration or your criticism of that media. That's how discussion happens.
Where do you think the lines are between criticism and censorship? Censorship campaigns in particular.
Um, so that's honestly a difficult question to answer. The truth is that uh, making an expression that is an objection to a piece of some other expression is fine, but I would say where you draw the line is where you get somebody involved who has discretion over the medium uh, and can unilaterally make a decision to remove it. So, like, you can make fun of people, you can make your own art or your own comics or your own video games or host your own podcasts and be as critical of somebody else's work as you want. You should do that, in fact. What you shouldn't do is go to their boss and say, I'm going to rile up all these people, so take it out.
Well, wouldn't these people just say that, hey, look, I think this thing in the video game or comic book or whatever is sexist. I happen to tweet you saying, hey, take this out. 3,000 other people just happen to agree with me and all say the same thing. That's just our opinion. It's our free speech.
Well, you're entitled to do that. I object to it, but you're entitled to do that.
When you say you object to it, what do you mean? Were you harassing the people who harassed the developers?
Well, I never harass anybody ever. That never happens. um, can you ask the question again?
When you objected to the people who criticized the developers and demanded they remove stuff from their game by working in concert with other people who believed the same thing,
Yeah, and
what
that's
did you do to criticize them?
me mostly. I just had discussion online. I always had an objection to ad campaign, like email campaigns where we're calling up their bosses and shit, and telling them, you know, I think you should, not do business with this company or with this person. And so I never engaged in that. Most of my objections were expressed either on podcasts or on Twitter.
Oh, so you're talking about Operation Disrespectful Nod. You were not a supporter.
No, I wasn't.
When you argued with these people on the internet, did you dox them or threaten them or anything like that?
Oh no, no, that's going way, way over the line.
Do you think a lot of people in GamerGate did dox people or did threaten them when they got into these heated discussions?
I'm sure that it happened. We know for a fact that at least the one kid got busted by the FBI for sending bomb threats to Anita Sarkeesian. So it definitely happened. But to be fair, he wasn't really Gamergate. It was just some stupid kid who got caught up in stupid kid stuff. Um, I am certain that I know of at least one person that did dox other people, and that person was, I won't say a member of Gamergate, but was a Gamergate supporter. And I can't think of his name now. I think he claimed that he used to work for NASA or something. Um, uh, but I didn't really see any of that.
Yeah, we can definitely get into the harassment portion a bit later.
Well, that was my answer.
Do you
I'm sure it happened, but I didn't see it. I knew of like those two instances, I think, and you're talking about, probably 200,000 people.
Yeah, no, you're good. Just a heads up, I'm doing this for the book, so like there's gonna be some dead air from time to time while I think about how to phrase things good for the book.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Some critics argue that Gamergate oh sorry, actually sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Do you have any thoughts on the removal of content from foreign games when they are localized?
Yeah, I don't like it. I think that the problem is a lot of companies they kind of rely on these localizers to make judgment calls because it's a very judgment call field. But I think that the problem is a lot of the people that they're relying on to make these decisions either have political motivations, which is true of some of them, and other ones I think overestimate how much like the American consumer would object to certain content.
Did you support torrential downpour to try and shine a light on this practice and criticize it?
Yeah, I think. I'm trying to think of. I don't remember torrential downpour very well, but I would certainly support that exposing the because there's a lot of that goes on, and it honestly very often hurts the creative vision of the original media.
Some critics argue that Gamergate was mostly or entirely right wing. Do you think that is accurate?
Um, According to the polls, no. I'm skeptical of the polls that were held. What I will say is that I think that at least at this point, anybody that's really still talking about it who isn't critical of Gamergate is the majority of them probably are right wing, at least compared to what the left wing is nowadays. But the ones that I knew, there were a lot of them that were like me, a disaffected liberal, because I came out of the school of liberal thought, but I'm more of a classical liberal, and I think that's what the majority of Gamergate was. It's just that now the taxonomy is that that's right wing.
You say you're a disaffected liberal. Do you want to talk about your political views or philosophy?
Um, I mean, I think we're really doing that already. I support strong speech rights. I think that obviously government shouldn't be involved in censorship, which we've now found out is a huge problem, way bigger than we thought it was before. But I think that it's an even bigger problem socially because uh, it's very easy to sorry, I'm giving you some dead air too.
Oh, you're totally
It's
cool, dude. Take as long as you need, man. I'm literally I care about
okay,
the book 1,000 times more than I care about the stream. So
okay. Yeah, that's honestly that's my that's the core of my political ideology, is the concern with not just First Amendment rights, because that's U.S. specific, but the but also the larger issue of censorship being caused by social pressures. So that's really my main political concern.
Have your politics changed since Gamergate, or perhaps because of it?
Yeah, they have. Um, it's it's honestly what made me realize that Democrats and I no longer share the important core values that I thought that they did previously. Um, I remember having a discussion early on. This would have been early 2015, I think, with somebody uh, that was a critic of Gamergate, and we got into the discussion because I told them that I usually vote Democrat, although I didn't consider myself a Democrat. I usually vote a Democrat. And they're dang it, stop going, stupid thing. Uh, and I told them that I usually vote Democrat, and then I expressed my concerns about First Amendment violations and due process rights and things like that. And the uh, it just kind of shocked me because the person was like, "Well, then why the hell would you vote for Democrats? We don't have those values." And that was just, it was shocking because that guy was, he was progressive and he voted Democrat, and I was like, wow, you know, didn't realize that until then uh, that Democrats were so far off the path that I thought that they were on. And so my politics sort of changed in that my voting habits changed, because after that I voted either independent or Republican. Although I still vote for the same values.
Did you vote for Trump? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, by the way.
No, I didn't vote for Trump either time. In fact,
You say that the Democrats are no longer believing in liberal values like free speech. Do you think that the Republicans are good defenders of liberal values?
uh, I don't. However, I think that they're a better defender than Democrats at this point.
I don't want to get
Like
too big
they're
into
like
Oh, God.
I was just gonna say, like they're both bad at it. It's just that Republicans, at at least at this point, care about it a little bit more, in my opinion.
I don't want to get super big into politics since that's not what this interview is about, but I do think it's worth
Mhm.
exploring a little bit more, okay?
Okay,
If that's cool with you.
yeah, that's fine.
Democrats or people who are more on the left might say that Donald Trump represents a break from liberal values and democratic norms and traditions to a very significant degree. Do you think that's not? What do you think of that assessment?
They're probably right. Honestly, like the I'm not a Trump supporter, like by far, and I never have been. My criticism was of media coverage of Trump and the dishonest and often unethical way that even congressmen behaved in response to him. Um, but like I don't have any illusions about him. The guy mostly doesn't believe what he says, and his track record is very poor on defending those values.
Do you think that the Republicans with this upcoming primary election are going to get rid of Trump in favor of a more moderate candidate? Or not moderate, but more, I guess, like pro liberal democracy candidate?
Um, I honestly don't know. It's kind of a coin flip. Dems in a number of states are working to get Trump off the ticket, and even some of the more anti-Trump Republicans are joining them. And if he loses even one state, like if he's not on the ballot in even one state, like he's not going to win. So I hope they do. I would prefer DeSantis ticket. That's the guy that I think has an actual track record of doing something in government, dealing with respects to conservative values, and in particular, the encroachment of this sort of woke ideology into government and many of our social institutions.
Do you think that by going after Disney or some books that are in schools that DeSantis is anti-free speech?
I would actually agree with you on Disney. I thought that he overstepped his bounds a little bit, or at least came too close to the line for my comfort when it came to the Disney thing. The books in public schools, I don't have an objection to. There's limited space in libraries and in the curricula, and so it's entirely within a state's discretion if they want to take some material out, or choose not to make those materials available to kids. But I did the thing that bothered me about DeSantis was that he also went after like universities in that bill, or it wasn't him; it was the Florida Congress, but he supported it. Um, and so that I had an objection to because it's one thing when you're dealing with kids. You do actually need to be kind of careful what kind of explicit material you give them. But with adults, no, that was going over the line.
Are you okay with gaming sites criticizing games through a political or religious lens, such as a Marxist, feminist, Christian, or other lens?
Yeah, they should be able to do that. I disagree with them, and I usually object to their reasoning because their reasoning is usually very flawed. But they should be able to do that.
Do you think that there's any value at all in that sort of political critique?
Yeah, yeah, and just as I would object to them trying to shut down that discussion on our side, they should be able to have that discussion because there is probably perspective in what they're saying uh, that has some value, even if I disagree with a lot of the reasoning surrounding it.
One of the GamerGate people I talked to a couple of days ago argued that they believed that the website should be free to criticize them, but that if they do that, they shouldn't put official review scores on them. What do you think?
Um, that's a tough call. Um, that is a judgment call, in my opinion. Maybe I would say like if they labeled it well to say, hey, by the way, we're taking this score through a political lens, right? Well, that's fine as long as you're telling people. It's when you try to hide that fact behind a bunch of jargon or present it deceptively that it becomes a problem, especially when it affects commerce, which it would.
Some people say that GamerGate was the first battle of the culture war. Do you have any thoughts on that framing?
That is almost true. I think the controversy surrounding Atheism Plus was probably the first real shake-up in the political landscape in the culture war, but Gamergate was certainly the largest, and it came shortly after.
I know you said you haven't had a lot of interactions with anti-GamerGate people, but out of the interactions you did have, do you think that, well, hang on, let's, do you have anything you want to say about the times you interacted with anti-GamerGate people?
Uh, I mean, they're thoroughly unpleasant. Not to put too fine a point on it. Um, I mean, like I get a lot of their criticisms, even if I disagree with them. The thing that really bugs me about them is that uh, this is one of the rare times when, well, let me see how I can phrase this. Um, I think that the anti-Gamergate people don't actually understand the position that most Gamergate people had. Like, legitimately don't understand it. And it's they've personalized it, right? They've made it into their sort of personality or in the part of their character, and so they end up discussing emotionally instead of like really thinking things through and bothering to look up information and verify that their preconceptions are right. And so that's been my experience with them. It's very difficult to talk to them because They, frankly, are just too emotional.
Do you think that's a fair characterization of the anti-Gamergate community?
Yeah,
Some anti-Gamergate people have been willing to talk about it, though.
I'm sure that's true. My like, I'm not saying all anti-Gamergate. I'm saying like my interactions have been that way. So it's
To be
I
fair, yeah,
wouldn't be
that was the
surprised.
question I asked you about your interactions. To be fair,
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that there are people that are like avidly critical of Gamergate that can make the arguments rationally, and probably there are some that do. It's just not been my experience.
how do you think that the conversations during Gamergate and about Gamergate could have been more productive?
Um, well, Gamergate does have a bad habit of trolling. Um, we tend to get kind of ugly, or tended. We're not really around anymore, but we tended to get kind of ugly and dismissive. And I think that, and don't get me wrong, anti Gamergate does the exact same thing. But I think that we could have been a lot better. We could have gotten further with the discussion, probably if we had been like less trolly and uh, more rational, or more level-headed or fair. I don't know exactly what the word would be.
When you said trolly or ugly and dismissive, what do you mean?
Well, when we talk to people, when we talk to anti Gamergate, and actually this is true of Gamergate's politics in general, we tend to be dismissive of people that we don't agree with. I'm not saying all of us do, but it is a trope within Gamergate, and honestly, the discussions online in general. So my criticism would be that if we'd been a little more level-headed about it, and not been quite so dismissive and trolled as much as we did, we probably could have gotten a discussion. We probably could have gotten further than we did. Although I don't know how much further.
When some critics claimed Gamergate supporters were only straight white men, women and minorities who supported Gamergate created Not Your Shield in response. Do
Mhm.
you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was like a ridiculous criticism. I mean, I've actually met more women and trans people and gay people from my interactions with Gamergate than I had anywhere else in my history. So it's like it was an obscenely obtuse criticism of Gamergate. It just wasn't true.
True, actually. My first interactions with people who were trans were actually because of Gamergate. And
Yep.
they were very positive interactions, and I had a very positive, positive view of that community because of well, not really, it's not really a community, it's individuals, but um, I I didn't know anything about this stuff, the whole trans thing, prior to Gamergate, but it was a good opportunity to meet people who come from that background. I had nothing about it at all.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised there were so many. Like it lends some credence to the notion that there are more trans people than we statistically realize. Like I think the supposed number is like 2%. I'm willing to entertain the notion that it's a higher number than that, and it's because of the interactions that I had during GamerGate.
Yeah, one thing that the anti-Gamergate community believed about us was that we were transphobic, or that we didn't like trans people very much. And I think that I think it personally, I think it was fair to say that some people who supported Gamergate were. I mean, this was also 10 years ago, so people didn't even
Yeah,
know what this stuff was back then. Um, I think some people were, and I think if people have like Christian religious views, they're like, hey, look, I don't know about this stuff. I don't think that like makes them a moral monster or anything. But
yeah, yeah.
what do you think of that
Um,
percep? Oh God, you want to?
no, go ahead.
What do you think of that perception? Do you think that was accurate about Gamergate being
That
anti-transgender people?
Oh, no, no, no. My experience has been that it was ideologies that were being pushed by people in the name of transgender, sort of transgender rights, as they'd call it. So it's one thing to be critical of an ideology. That doesn't mean that you hate the people that they're talking about or that are speaking. It just means you're critical of their ideology, which has been my experience.
Some websites banned discussion of Gamergate. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it was crazy, and I mean it was very what is it called, Streisand effect. The more they clamped down, the more GamerGate would open discussions in new frontiers. It was a complete failure.
How important to you was it that bad actors were condemned? Like the two people you mentioned who were legit. Well, one of them wasn't even a Gamergate person, but you said one person was,
Yeah.
who was a bad actor. How important to you was it that that kind of behavior was condemned?
I think that it looks good for GamerGate, but ultimately it didn't do anything. Like, anti-GamerGate still poses that all GamerGate are bad actors, so it didn't really. I think that it's a moral good. You should say no. You can't be hateful. You can't like send threats. Dang it! Quit going to sleep. Sorry. Um. Uh. So it's a moral good, but it ultimately didn't have any utility.
All right. Do you think most Gamergate people did a good job condemning harassment?
Yeah, yeah. I I didn't see a lot of harassment per se, so I didn't really get a chance to see people condemning it a lot. I did see it sometimes, but I think that we did a fair job, like when it actually did come up.
Do you think that the people on the anti-Gamergate side policed their community well?
Um, Maybe by their standards. I mean, my criticism of them is that they weren't open to any real substantive discussion. So there was, I mean, there was some harassment from their side, and I certainly think that it was more on their side than our side. But uh, you know, I don't know. I guess I don't really have an opinion that way on that.
If you saw someone, quote unquote, on your side doing something you thought was bad, how would you handle that situation?
To be honest, right now I would just mute them. Um, uh, Back in the day when GamerGate was a thing, I would try and settle discussion, like bring it back down to a more respectful tone. But nowadays, I realize that it just doesn't do any good, and so I usually just mute them. And if they're following me, I'll usually just like unfollow, you know, get Twitter to unfollow them or wherever I am.
I discovered something about you recently.
What's that?
I When a certain third-party troll had sent death threats to Brianna Wu, you were one of several people, probably like over 50 people, who reported the tweet. The one with the picture of the gun. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but that does sound like something I would do.
I can link it to you if you want to have it for posterity.
Sure, I don't mind that. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you get into like legitimate threats like that, you definitely need to bring it to the attention of the host, and I don't care if they're on our side or not. It's just not okay. I sound like I'm like taking a stand here. Like I don't care who thinks what people think about me, but yeah, that's not okay.
You don't have to talk about it, but did you receive any harassment during Gamergate from either side or from third-party trolls?
Oh yeah. In fact, I was contracting for a company in 2014, and I want to say into late 2015, and maybe even 2016. I can't remember, but I actually had somebody call up the company I was contracting with. And what they did, they thought I was like a statutory employee, and they were trying to get me fired. But it was funny because, like, I was my boss, so when they called and were like talking about me and talking about like how I'm this misogynist and you shouldn't be doing business with them. They were talking to me. They didn't realize it. So I did have that happen once. And then, I had the occasional, there was this type of person that would like drop into your DMs and say something like really shitty to you and then like block you and then come back like a week later and do the same thing. So I had a few of those. But it honestly wasn't as bad for me as it was for a lot of other people.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know you had experienced that. I'm sorry.
Nah, it's all right. I actually found the whole thing funny. I let them go through their whole spiel too before I told them.
Do you think this do you think this was a third party troll, or do you think this was an anti-gamergator or GG Revolt or something else?
I honestly have no idea. I, told them at the end, I was like, and I trolled them back, is what I did. I was like, you're actually talking to me. And then they just hanged up, and I didn't follow it any further because, it only happened once. If it had happened again, I might have gotten the police involved, but I never looked into it after that.
Why do you think the media covered a lot of the harassment that anti-Gamergate people received, but almost none of the harassment that pro-Gamergate people received?
Because it's politically convenient. Frankly, anti-Gamergate was better at messaging than Gamergate was, um, and so and there was the issue of the sort of incestuous relationship that they had that journalism outlets had, and so it was just all around politically more convenient for them to cover that, to pick that side. Like I said, journalists are lazy.
Do you have any thoughts on Zack Attack?
I recognize the expression, but I don't remember what it is.
When the anti-Gamergate community tried to dox MomBot, but we had someone infiltrating their community who released all the logs.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Um, I don't really remember a lot about it, but I thought I did. I do remember finding that pretty funny, pretty hilarious.
Yeah. To be fair, Gamer Ghazi did condemn them.
Did they? I didn't know that.
They did. There might have been like one or two posts that defended it or something. I'd have to go back and look, but like the vast majority of them were against it.
Oh well, good on them then. I
Do
mean,
you
they're assholes, but good on them. That's like I said, it's a moral good. It's not going to change anyone in Gamergate's mind. But
what do you think of the term sea lining? Are you familiar with it?
uh, yeah, God, it's been so long. I don't remember what it meant. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you the meme. It even got its own Wikipedia page. How wild is that? That's wild.
She lying.
Here, let me link it. I'll post it in the. Actually, it's already in the general chat. Well, it's pretty far up though, due to all the new messages. So I'll repost it.
Uh,
Oh no, shoot.
let's.
Copy image. There we go.
Oh yeah, that's way too small. I can't see that.
Okay, all right. Basically,
Type of trolling or harassment consists of pursuing. Oh, yeah, that would be a lazy person's response to legitimate inquiry.
well, I think I was talking with somebody the other day about this, literally last night, and it's funny because she brought up that she thought Gamergate was a harassment campaign. She said this
Mhm.
when she was talking about it, and I was like, well, let's explore that. And she's like, well, I don't really want to talk about it. And of course, out of respect, I'm like, okay, we don't have to talk about it. But it's like you made a very public claim on your channel about a group that I was involved with. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's perfectly fair if people criticize that claim.
Well, I agree. don't know what else to say. But yeah, no, I agree. Um, the problem is, like I said, the messaging that Anti-Gamergate had was a lot better than the messaging that Gamergate had, and so it persisted for long enough that it sort of sank into people's, I'd say, subconscious or something like that, and so you know, people just have that feeling now, and it's hard to argue with a feeling.
What do you think about how the media covered Gamergate?
Actually, can you give me like 1 minute?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no worries.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, take as much time as you need.
Okay, sorry about that. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. Do you have
All
any
right.
thoughts on how the media covered Gamergate?
Yeah, they covered it lazily, to be honest, with the exception of a few good, a few good journalists. Unfortunately, there just weren't that many, so it was mostly just reprinting of what somebody else wrote, and so that would be my criticism. It was just incredibly lazy writing.
Did you reach out to any journalists or media outlets who wrote articles about Gamergate to correct misinformation?
Um, I know that I had at least one. Was it a newspaper? No, it wouldn't have been the newspaper. I did talk to a journalist, like have an interview with a journalist, like in 2015. Um, but I want to say that it was like the local news in San Antonio, like the local Fox affiliate. But I can't, like, it's been so long, I can't remember. Um, but we did have that discussion, and then of course I criticized them on social media, responding occasionally with evidence refuting their claims and their headlines.
We had a lot of evidence on our side, and anytime we showed people evidence, they mostly just ignored us, like the media.
Yeah, unfortunately, a corollary to that journalists are lazy writers is that people are lazy consumers of media. So,
Did the media's coverage of Gamergate increase or decrease your trust in them?
oh, it definitely decreased it. I mean, like I said, I knew before that there were ethics problems with in journalism, in particular in gaming journalism. I just expected that. Um, uh, but I just didn't. I didn't until GamerGate happened to realize like just how bad it was, and that was in it wasn't just in gaming media, it was in mainstream media, and that was kind of shocking to me. That makes sense. I feel like I just contradicted myself.
If a journalist or games journalist who got Gamergate wrong is reading this now, what do you want them to reconsider?
um wow, that's a good question. Gotta think about that for a minute. If it's not a lazy journalist, right, and it's probably a lazy journalist. But if it's not, um, just keep in mind that passions were flared on both sides at the time. So there were definitely bad actors on both sides, but be skeptical of claims. Be skeptical of claims, especially that have partial evidence behind them. That seemed to be how a lot of anti-Gamergate operated, was by deceptively showing evidence, um, or only showing evidence that supported their side, their perspective. So if there's somebody, if there's a journalist reading or watching the stream or whatever, just keep that in mind. That uh, when people tell you about Gamergate or anti-Gamergate, they're only going to tell you what puts them in what they feel puts them in the strongest light. And so consider people's claims with a great deal of skepticism, and that includes our side too. You know.
Have you seen the Wikipedia article on Gamergate?
Oh yeah, many times. That was, uh, God, that was just an abortion. It was terrible. And I remember the edit wars too. That was crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the edit wars, but dude, that was news every single like week. It'd be like, you're like, we managed to correct the record on this specific claim, and then it's like, but then like 2 weeks later, the anti-Gamergate editors who were like super dedicated, like they had like no lives, probably on both sides if they're editing Wikipedia nonstop. But
Yeah,
no offense to anybody, I'm not demeaning anybody's contribution to Gamergate. I'm sure it was a very important aspect of the cause to try and get the truth out there. Um, I'm glad people did it. I'm glad people took the time and effort to do it. I don't want to demean that. But actually, I'd love to interview somebody who was involved with that process, who spent like hundreds of hours of their life editing Wikipedia to try and
yeah.
correct
Just to
misinformation.
get it reversed by somebody that's got more edits than you, so they have seniority and yeah. The one thing though that the Gamergate article did make me realize was like how unreliable Wikipedia is. It blew my mind. Like once when I saw that, like I started to see problems in other articles, like a lot of them. And I began to realize like just how you just can't trust the information in Wikipedia. It's unless it's just like the most milk toast thing, like it's explaining how tachyons work or something, something that couldn't possibly be political. Then it's just not reliable.
Would you like to see quote unquote the narrative on Gamergate change to become more neutral and or positive?
Um, I mean that would be nice, uh, but it's not going to happen. People that perpetuate the kind of hateful vision, the kind of hateful perception of Gamergate are never gonna stop doing that. And so I would like it to happen, but it's just not likely to happen. There's probably always going to be a stink about Gamergate.
Out of character, and this is just completely not going to be in the book at all. I just want to ask real quick, because the chat's asking. If they want to reach you on Twitter, do you want to share your Twitter handle? You don't have to at all.
Yeah, it's crash_matrix.
Has your conscious experience as a human been made worse to any degree because of the negative media narrative about Gamergate? Well, you already talked
Um,
about your harassment, so I guess that's. Sorry, go ahead.
uh, Sorry, what was the question?
Um, Obviously, a lot of people have bought into this narrative about Gamergate being sexists and harassers and evil people. Has this has this narrative that has become unfortunately mainstream to the point where it's even on Wikipedia, has it affected your conscious experience in a negative way?
Um, I mean, it sucks, but I think that it equipped me to be better at at discussing things, better at articulating, better at researching, because we're so maligned that when I take a position, I have to be absolutely right. Because people that are critical of GamerGate will jump on, I mean, anything. If you have a spelling error, I mean, anything. So yeah, it sucks that there's this narrative that's so negative, and it bugs me, but it also made me stronger in a lot of ways.
You say that it's probably never going to happen. Why are you so pessimistic?
Uh, to be honest, it's because I know people. You may see the narrative change in 20 years or something. It's possible. It's just people people have an emotional people have an attachment to their emotional beliefs, and in my experience, that just doesn't change. There are a few people that will that can come on board, but not enough to change the narrative entirely. Like you can get a few people here and there over time, but not enough to get, in my opinion, any real traction on the greater narrative.
All right, for some light items, what's your favorite video game?
Uh, Gosh, the one that I've played the most, I want to say, is Skyrim. But the game that I liked the most was definitely Mass Effect 2 or Dragon Age 2, one of the two. So there are three of them.
Who's the best Mass Effect character?
Uh, if we're not talking about Shepard, I got to go with Liara, but that's just because she's hot.
Did you romance
Honestly,
her?
though, oh yeah, I liked her because she actually had, in my opinion, better character development. Don't get me wrong, also, she's hot. But like I felt like her romance line had a lot more depth than anybody else's.
Yeah, I'll need to go back through and play. They're such long games. I've
Yeah,
already played through them like 3 times, but well, or twice I guess I've played through them. And I think I went with Liara both times for my romance.
yeah, she's definitely especially if you want to go like the longest through all the games. I think it's either her or Ashley or the other guy,
Caden?
Caden. Yeah, thanks. Whichever one you say. I think those are the only ones. Actually, no, you can only romance Liara through all three of them. Now that I think about it, and the only reason you can romance Liara in number two is because of the DLC.
Yeah, Shadow Broker.
Yeah, Shadow Broker. So yeah, especially if you want to romance a character through the whole thing, she's the one that you have to go with.
Did you have any thoughts on the ending of Mass Effect 3?
Yeah. Actually, I wasn't as critical of it even before they added the free DLC ending. I actually liked it because I liked the notion of the heroic sacrifice. I felt like it was appropriate for Shepard, even though I hated seeing her die. Spoiler alert.
Do you think that people who criticized the ending of Mass Effect 3 and then in some cases demanded that they redo the ending, do you think that they were infringing upon the creative freedom of the developer?
Uh, that's a tough question. I can see it both ways. Yeah, I can see it both ways. Dang it, quit going to sleep. Sorry. Uh, yeah, I guess like since I didn't really have an objection to the original ending, I just don't have a lot of like attachment to it.
Yeah.
So I can still like they had a right to object, right? They had a right to say, okay, this was just lazy fucking writing, which it was. Because they basically just put a pin in the end. But I actually liked the notion of of like the heroic noble sacrifice. So I can, like I said, I can see it both ways.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if anyone actually demanded the ending be changed. To be honest, I know that like people say that some people did, but I've never actually like seen the proof myself to see like what it is
Yeah,
they were saying.
yeah, that's a good point. There was a lot of discussion about it, but I don't remember any like campaigns or anything to get it changed.
And it's also kind of weird because it seems like I think the developers at the time. Actually, I probably shouldn't say this because I don't know if it's 100% true, and if it's going to end up in the book, I want to make sure it's true. So never mind.
Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say because we can talk about the general point without talking about the specific. It seemed like the publisher rushed it out, and the developers wanted to do more with it, and they kind of, I think, publicly hinted that they wanted to do more, but they couldn't. So it's a bit of a
That is
weird. It seems like the
that
publisher
is
infringed
that is
upon their.
indeed what happened.
Yeah.
I can obviously it's just my word, but I do recall reading an article about one of the developers talking about they were in a meeting with EA, and EA said EA kicked somebody out of the meeting, I think, and said, "This is we need to get this out. Use this as the ending. We're taking the reins on this one." Um, yeah,
So,
so
so in that case, you can almost like argue that like the if people were demanding that they do the ending right, that they're like almost defending the creative freedom of the artist against the publisher. Like it's sort of a
yeah,
weird case, you know.
yeah, and so long as nobody's going to like advertisers or other publishers and demanding like tortiously interfering with their contracts in some way, I think it's perfectly fine. The criticism that people had of it, I do like the like the newer ending, the DLC ending better, but um, I think it's perfectly fine to especially in that situation where it was, as far as I'm aware, was true that EA came in and kind of steamrolled the writers.
What's your favorite ending?
Um, the synthesis ending. So
Yeah, it's a tough choice because the synthesis ending I feel like is actually it's the most, I guess, like moral ending, quote unquote, but there's like this very bad aspect to it where you're like forcing everybody in the entire galaxy to undergo this drastic change to their genetic makeup without really their consent.
yeah, yeah, that is a good criticism. I'd never really thought about that, but that is a good criticism. Um, yeah, wow, I'd never actually thought about it that way. Um, my only real objection was that she dies. Like no matter what, she died. Well, there is a renegade ending where she lives, but a lot of people die. So there weren't really any good choices. That's why I say I like the synthesis most because I think that it created the greatest good and the least harm of all of the options.
She being Shepard.
Yeah, yeah. I always play FemShep.
But you're a misogynist, bro. You hate women. You oppose diversity in video games. What are you doing?
No, I actually used to make a joke to people about that, and I used to say, if I'm going to stare at somebody's ass for 70 hours, I'd rather it be a woman's ass than a man's ass.
Fair point.
So
Fair
I
point.
got my misogyny in there, even though I picked the female shepherd.
Well, let's. This is a good branching off point to talk about diversity in games if you want.
Sure.
Do you think it's important that people feel represented in games?
I think that, like, I understand why people have those objections. I think they're overblown. Um, I know a lot of people who are perfectly fine uh, with the diversity makeup of game characters. A lot of those are minorities. Um, I I I don't object to there being more diversity either. It's just I don't want the quality of the video game to suffer as a result of it. So, as an example, in Dragon Age Inquisition, they kind of like hand-fisted this trans character into it, Krem, Prometheus or something like that, and it was just poorly written. I mean, it was clearly like a tack on to the game. Like she had absolutely no, or he, whatever, had absolutely no impact on the story except for a couple of dialogue lines. And that negatively impacted like it took me out of the immersion. However, uh, games like uh, why am I calling it Greedfall? BioShock. BioShock Infinite did a really great job, and they had plenty of diverse characters in that game, and I felt like they did a good job of it not looking sort of ham-fisted or shoved in. And it ended up being, in my opinion, being a very, very good game.
I know you said you're a Mass Effect fan. Some people, oh, my perception at the time was that some people in the anti-social justice warrior community, quote unquote, and some people who supported GamerGate even, were losing their minds over this game. Do you have any thoughts on that game and the controversy surrounding it? There were several.
Which game?
Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh, yeah, it was just I don't. The problem with Mass Effect Andromeda is that they brought a team to develop it that was completely new. They did have a lot of problems with the politics and with being disrespectful to their fan base, which is bad enough on its own. But I mean, even like they weren't up to snuff to create a AAA game in the fashion of Mass Effect. It was just poor management, uh, a poor management decision to put that many sort of greenhorns onto it. So that was my criticism. It was just poorly written. I did have a lot of objections to some of their creators because they were pretty ugly online to the fan base.
Well, one of them in particular was posting like some really bad stuff.
Yeah, like what did they, Snowdrift or Snowfall or whatever. I can't remember what it was.
I
But
remember the guy's name, but I'm not saying it because I don't want to get sued.
yeah, I don't want to say it either because I mean, there's liability issues for you and stuff. Um, uh, but yeah, there was I did have an objection to that. Not as much as a lot of people. My objection was just that it was just a piss poor made game. It was clearly done by a team that was playing with expensive toys but didn't know how to do it. Like do it right.
Yeah, like I agree. I I know one of the creators said some racist stuff on Twitter, and I don't approve of that or condone that. But I don't think that means you should boycott the entire game or anything like that. But now if it's a bad
Yeah.
game and you want to boycott it because the game sucks, like that's a
Yeah.
1000% fine.
Yeah.
But not
And
because
I
it's
ended up buying the game. It's just I waited until it was like $5 on Steam. So, which wasn't that long. I think it was like 9 months after release. That's how fast.
one of the most popular GamerGate videos I ever did though was actually me criticizing the people who were outraged before the game even came out, who were freaking out because of well, in part because of the Man via the
Yeah.
developer controversy, and then in part developers racist comments controversy, I should say, and then in part because some of them were like legitimately like anti-diversity, like oh my god, there's too many minorities in the game. Like, what, like there were people on YouTube comment section. I know the highest quality discourse ever. There were people in YouTube comment section who were saying stuff like that. So I had to call that out. It wasn't in my comment section. It was on the official video, the official trailer. And I'm like,
Uh,
so I criticized those people hardcore, and I got over like 150,000 views or something on that video.
yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with diversity in games. If they want to put more there have been a lot of games that were done really well that clearly had diversity put into them. Like it's actually one I just bought not that long ago. Crap. How did I forget the name of this? I've been playing it nonstop. Uh Stop updating and open. Really? Thank you, jackass. Not you. Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 has a ton of diversity in it, right? You got trans characters, you've got a bisexual, you've got several different ethnicities, you've got polyamorous relationships. There's a lot of that diversity in there, but they did the game really well. So I don't have a problem with diversity, even if there's a lot of it. It's just I don't want it to be in a piss poor game, you know.
Do you have any thoughts on the Nexus mods removing the mods that removed pronouns from Starfield?
Yeah, they're assholes. They're free to make content decisions on their own website, right? I disagree with it. I think they're assholes for doing it because they only did it to one side. And in fact, the guy that they I think the guy was banned, but he'd actually put like other mods that changed all the flags to pride flags, like, and so he was being very even-handed about it. So, like, Nexus Mods is free to moderate their content as they see fit, but that was just stupid and childish.
Do you have any thoughts on Vivian James or GamerGate related art projects?
Um, Not really. To be honest, I thought that it was a clever character. Um, but I don't really have any like comments on it.
The most important question of all. Whatever happened to Ethics the Sea Lion?
Oh, yeah, what did happen to that?
Nobody knows. I've been asking everybody in these interviews. Nobody knows. At some point I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and send an email over to the charity and see if they know.
Yeah, God, I forgot about that. Yeah, we like sponsored a sea lion or something, right?
Yeah, we named the sea lion Ethics.
Oh my God, I forgot. But yeah, no, I have no idea what happened to it. No clue.
I'm scared to know the answer, but I'm gonna Google it right now. Sea lion lifespan. 20 to 30 years. Oh yeah.
So
Ethics
he's
is
probably still alive. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. All right. Now I don't know
What?
I don't know if it's different if they're in captivity though. Was it for a zoo?
This
It was for no. It was a wildlife. It was It wasn't a zoo, right? It was a It was
It
like
was like a
a
wildlife preserve or
reserve.
something,
Yeah.
right?
So they
Yeah,
that's like basically in the wild. So
yeah. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see anything on Google that. I mean, I could probably find out, but yeah, I totally forgot about that.
all right.
Named it F.
What was your favorite moment during GamerGate?
Let's see. There were a lot of good moments. I don't know if I could pick just one. Um. Oh, yeah. And what was it? Andrew Chu or whatever.
Arthur Chu.
Uh, Arthur Chu. Thank you. When he now he clearly didn't mean it the way it came off, but it was hilarious. But when he goes, it ends tonight.
Oh my God!
He clearly meant because that was about SPJ airplay, if I remember right. And clearly, what he meant was, well, they're going to have it tonight, and it's going to be over. But it was just funny because he just got nonstop shit for supposedly making a veiled threat, and I couldn't stop laughing at it.
Well, he did it right before like the bomb threat got called in too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
just
like
within an hour or something.
so it looked like wait, it ends tonight, and then a bomb threat gets called in like hours later, or maybe it was like a day. But it's like, I don't know.
No, it was that night.
Yeah, it was that night. So it was.
Yeah, yeah,
dude.
And that was, and bomb threats obviously are no joke. Pulling fire alarms is no joke, but that was so perfect. Like that was almost like an exclamation point for for GamerGate for me.
I'm not sure if you remember, but some people said that GamerGate should have ended with SPJ Airplay. What do you think?
I understand, because one of the issues with sort of political movements is congealing, like far, far beyond their intended purpose. So I understand, and don't necessarily disagree with people that said that. However, that said, it's not like an official membership or something. So you're, it's just people posting on Twitter and YouTube and the chans and stuff. So it was they were right in that. I think that we accomplished largely what we as a community wanted to accomplish, but you were never going to stop people from pursuing it.
If you could have changed one thing about Gamergate, what would it be?
Let's see. All the hot bitches should have been naked. No. Um, like serious answer. I've gone into it already. But I do wish that we had been a little less trolly, and a little less dismissive. Although I'm not sure it would have done any good. But that is something that always did bother me because there were a lot of people uh, that wanted to be taken seriously but weren't treating the other guys seriously, and I felt like that was disrespectful.
What would you have personally done differently during Gamergate?
Um, hmm, I don't know. Honestly, I don't have any thoughts on that.
All right, that's fair. Let's say 10 years from now, an online. Sorry, let me redo this. Let's say it is 10 years from now, and an online movement is looking to Gamergate, Black Lives Matter, and Occupy Wall Street for guidance for their movement. What advice do you have for them?
Um, well, actually, this is a point that I brought up when you were asking me about if I were to say something to journalists, and that would be that whatever side that you're on, recognize that whoever you're talking to is only going to present you with information they think puts them in the best light, and it's an ethical problem, right? Like a personal ethical problem, but uh, you have to realize that people are not going to give you all the information, and so you need to be very careful when you're making decisions based on what other people say, because it leads a lot of people astray.
Admittedly, this is probably the least contentious interview I've done so far. I did push back significantly more with the other two, but we didn't really have any areas where I think I needed to hammer home. Like not even hammer home, but just play devil's advocate and advocate more because like most of what you said was like pretty chill. How do you think I'm doing when it comes to biases with this project?
Well, I mean, even if you hadn't said that you were a part of it, it would have been obvious from the questions that you asked that you. I don't want to say we're a member of GamerGate, but that you were on the GamerGate side. I don't think that it is. I don't think you did it in a bad way, but it was definitely clear that you do have a bias there.
What are some questions that I should have asked but didn't?
Honestly, it's been pretty exhaustive. I mean, um, I can't really think of any, to be honest.
All right. Do you have any other thoughts on this project? You obviously wanted to participate in this. You wanted to tell your story. So, what made this an important thing for you to do?
Um, just to keep the conversation going. Even nowadays, you've got critics of Gamergate spreading a lot of information that's dubious at best and outright lies at worst. So, as long as that keeps happening, I think it's a good idea to occasionally do something like this to make our perspectives available to people that might be curious.
All right. It's been 9 years. We just had the ninth anniversary recently. Is there anything that you've personally learned from participating in this?
Um, Yeah, probably the biggest thing that I learned is uh, that when like online discussion is, I'm trying to think how to put this. Um, Other people usually have a valid perspective, or at least a little thread of it. When Gamergate first happened and I got those ugly responses, I originally had this mindset that they didn't have any valid objections. That anti-Gamergate didn't have any valid objections. And what I learned was uh, they do have some. Um, they speak too emotionally, and so they don't really communicate it well to Gamergate. Um, uh, but the important takeaway is that people usually have some valid, at least, piece of perspective, and I've figured out that I should be more receptive to that.
Was Gamergate successful in your eyes?
Um, that would depend on how you define successful. I think we were successful in that we brought the issues to the wider to the attention of the wider populace or whatever. Uh, it was successful in that it kind of launched the culture war, which I think is important. Um, uh, it wasn't successful in that we really didn't get any ethical reforms. I mean, a few sites put up some ethics codes, but it's really more like suggestions and guidelines, and many of the ones that did have already taken them down. So we've had successes and we've had failures.
If an anti-Gamergate person is reading this right now, what would you say to them? Or what would you like to say to them?
Um, Pretty much what I've already said. Keep in mind that anybody, even if it's on your side, that you're talking to about almost anything that involves opinion, anything that involves politics, keep in mind that they're only going to be telling you like the stuff that they think uh, casts them in the strongest light. And so just keep that in mind, especially when you're talking to somebody that agrees with you or seems to agree with you, because that's often when we get sort of intellectually lazy.
Normally, I would wrap things up a little bit here, but you did talk about how you were socially awkward, or you had difficulty talking with people and didn't have very many friends prior to Gamergate, and that Gamergate helped. Do you want to talk about that?
Um, I mean, I can. You pretty much just said it. Gamergate gave me an outlet to sort of socialize with people, including you know, away from the keyboard, although mostly at the keyboard. But I mean, we had Gamergate meetups, we had gaming sessions, um, and I hadn't really had that until that point, and I didn't really become cognizant of how much of a problem that was until even a few years later. Um, I guess that would be my comments.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually kind of good that you're talking about how you used to be socially awkward and things were difficult for you, and then you were able to overcome that. Because I was the same way. Um, I had some friends who I'd hang out with, but like I wasn't like super social. I was kind of an introvert, kept to myself, and it was good to meet other people who were passionate about gaming and passionate about making gaming better. And I still think to this day that that's what the vast majority of us cared about. And there were some bad actors, and obviously we condemned them. And most of the bad actors weren't even GG people; they were trolls or they were GG
Or
Revolt, and that was a pretty small breakaway group.
yeah, or kids just trolling. There was a lot of that going on.
Oh, sure, 12-year-olds who are like, "Oh, let me go fuck with these GamerGate guys."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or harass Anita Sarkeesian.
True. Yeah. Like if you do you remember when Anita published a list of people who were harassing her, which you know I think it's actually important. I think it's good that she provided evidence of the people who were going after her. I think that that's good. I applaud her for doing that. Um, but they weren't GamerGate people. Like, not a single
Yeah.
person on the list was pro GG. Like, I think two of like the 100 accounts that I harassed her had even used the hashtag one time, and all the other accounts were just like teenagers.
Yeah.
They were
I
all like
remember
Call
that.
of Duty bros who were like, stop trying to take away my games,
Yeah.
you dumb, and then
Yeah,
like
no,
say something stupid.
I remember that. That was a pretty big deal with Gamergate because it was good that she provided the evidence, but when you actually analyzed it, like this was not Gamergate. Like she was just like throwing it at the wall. Just and and even though they're not Gamergate, it's still not okay what they were doing.
No, of
But
course not. Absolutely not. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it was hilarious because what was it? Something like 80 or 90. I can't remember how many, but there were a bunch, and I can't remember who went through the list, but somebody went through the whole list, and I think they, like you said, only found like two mentions of Gamergate.
Yeah, it was Sargon who went through the list,
Was it okay? Sargon, yeah.
which he kind of went crazy later on in life.
Oh yeah, he made the thing about Sargon. I don't actually like him anymore. Well, I don't hate him or anything. It's just he tried to reform Gamergate into like a political party, and I was like, okay, yeah, now you've kind of stepped into turf that I'm not okay with.
Do you think Gamergate was political?
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, we were definitely political. I mean, it was like a conglomeration of a bunch of different politics, but we were definitely political.
Talking about the Anita Sarkeesian point, obviously Anita Sarkeesian did receive harassment, and even if these people weren't Gamergate people by and large, she did receive tons of harassment. She's not really a big online person. She runs a YouTube channel, but like she's not like a huge internet savvy person. It seems from her perspective, a bunch of Gamergate people disagree with her on some stuff. Bunch of Call of Duty bros who are like 16 years old are sending her mean tweets. Do you think she could reasonably just say, "Hey, look, probably the same group of people," without and say that in good faith?
Um, I mean, I don't trust anything that she says in good faith. I mean, she she founded Feminist Frequency with a guy who used to run a one of those pickup artist things. Um, what was his name? I think he quit going to sleep. Um, Macintosh. And he used to run this like pickup artist channel or group or something. I can't remember the details.
I'm not
But
sure if
that's
that's true. You might want to like put like
no.
allegedly or something in front of that.
Okay. It seems like that was the case. I could be misremembering.
I don't know. Jonathan McIntosh was like a feminist. I don't maybe before becoming a feminist he was involved with like other stuff, but I I don't remember anything like that.
Okay.
I don't want to
Well,
put. I
okay.
mean, unless you
Then
got
I
sources,
could be wrong.
unless you got sources you want to send me.
Nah, I mean, I don't care enough about it
Okay.
to.
I just don't want
Yeah.
to. I honestly,
Yeah. No.
with
No.
this project, I
I
want to be super above board with all of the claims that are made.
okay. Yeah, that's totally fair. I can't back that up, so I'll withdraw the claim.
Do you want me to take it
Um.
out of the book then?
Uh. If you think it's appropriate,
Okay.
I can go either way. Um. But yeah, but my point was like I don't trust her to do anything in good faith. I've seen the way that she argues, and there's no way she can do it consistently the way that she has, and be arguing in good faith. However, yeah, I can't buy it.
Okay.
I think that it was a political weapon for her. She saw an easy way to get, in my opinion, to get support and kind of in some ways silence the critics, and so she went with that.
All right. Well, hey, is there anything else you want to talk about GG?
No, you have a pretty exhaustive list. I think we've covered most, like the main points.
it's I do have, I guess, one last question, which is doing this project. I was maybe it's because I was involved with GamerGate, so I know more about it. But it seems like anybody who wanted to know about GamerGate and cover it like in a fair, objective way, or even just like I don't even say objective, but like just in a fair way that's like presents both sides in a reasonable light, or like just even presents our perspective in any way, shape, or form, or even like remotely adheres to the truth of what happened during GamerGate. It seems like they could like just do that. Like all you'd have to do is like talk with us, because like like most of us back then, we all had our sources ready for everything. We're like, okay, here's this specific claim about this specific publication, and then this specific censorship controversy, and then here's the specific petition that we thought that was anti-free speech, and this is that, and this is this, and we had like sources and archives and everything. Like all a journalist had to do was be like, hey, I'm curious about this thing. Tell me about it. And we were like, in the journals who did do that, we were willing to always give them evidence. Like, it seems like it wouldn't be that hard to like try and cover this in a fair way. With just like
It,
it's not going to be like a 30 minutes of research. It's going to be like at least like 5 or 6 hours. But if you put those 5 or 6 hours in, you're gonna actually understand it.
yeah. Well, like I said, journalists by and large, and I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, but because it's tough subject matter because it attacks at an emotional level. But journalists are lazy by far, and the most convenient way of getting clicks, which is ultimately what they're doing, was to find a boogeyman, and GamerGate was that boogeyman. So you're right; it would be easy. Anybody, even to this day, that was a part of GamerGate, most of them are more than happy to talk about it. But it wouldn't get the clicks, and if you're a journalist, that honestly puts you at risk for sort of being blacklisted in some ways.
Well,
Not like a conspiratorial blacklist, but I mean, like, it'll put you out of favor with a lot of people that are in important positions in your field.
I hate to publicly contradict you, but as someone who is doing a project like this about GG, um, it's probably about 50-50. Um,
You think so?
reaching out to people, yeah, some people, like a lot of people are like, man, I don't want to touch that part of my life again. Or the reputation's so bad, they're like, I'm not sure I want, I'm not sure I want to have my name associated with that, even though I do think that the Gamergaters were smeared.
Ah, I see.
Like, yeah.
Well, I
Or
mean,
some
that hasn't
people
really
just
been
don't
my
reply.
experience, but
Or some people
yeah,
just don't.
a lot of the time,
But
yeah,
also, we're reaching out to accounts that are people are only semi-active on Twitter, if at all, from 10 years ago, and so.
yeah, yeah. Well, if that's your experience, I can't contradict it. It's not been my experience, but
Um, I I think mostly, it's probably like 60% of people are willing to talk about it, probably, and then like 35% won't reply, and like 5% will be like, nah, bruh, I'm good. But
okay,
there's a lot of don't replies, including from people who are active in the space, active on Twitter.
okay. Well, fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, cool. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Do you want to talk off air for a minute, or?
No, I'm good. I'm honestly like I'm a little sick right now, and so I'm probably gonna
Yeah,
go lay down.
you're good, man. Hope you feel better.
All right, thanks, mate.
All
It
right.
was nice talking to you.
Good talking to you too. Bye.
All right, bye bye.
All right. See if we'll raid anybody. Not sure if anybody's live right now. Oh. Oh yeah, Falcon Paladin's live actually. So go say hi to Falcon, everybody. He does StarCraft streams. Tell him Tachyon sent you. Oh, I can't redirect. Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, well, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for a good afternoon. Thanks for watching, and take care.